the first APBA Football Super Bowl show, Super Bowl 57. Now, we got the 2022 season on the horizon now. You know, Fast Drive Football, Al Wilson, he does his team cards. He's out. Ron Pizar, Data Driven Football, he's got prototypes out if you join his Facebook group. But with the 2022 APBA football season, we've got two of the luminaries here, Hall of Famer Ray Dunlap and Master Modifier Mark DeGarabedian, and we might get some other surprise guests if time allows. But we're going to card the 2022 Eagles and Chiefs and talk maybe about some other league must-haves or gray areas. Gentlemen, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks for putting this together. This will be fun.
So 2022 is the second 17-game season in the NFL. You've got the 14 of those teams, of the 32 teams in the playoffs. Eagles and Chiefs, what do they look like to you gentlemen? What's how far into the 40s are their offenses and defenses? Or maybe do they skirt a 39 or something here?
Well, it's interesting. I took a look at it this morning. Kansas City and Philadelphia are the number 1 and 2 offensive teams in the league. So offensively, they're going to get some points. And I would say that I would probably say they're going to get at least 42, 43, probably 44 points on offense. There's a number of all-pros on each team on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, however, it's going to be interesting because Philadelphia was 8th in the league in defense, and Kansas City was 16th. So, as far as the Super Bowl goes, I don't think that and again, which is kind of odd because if you listen to all of the pregame hype, they keep talking about how great Philadelphia's defense is, but yet finishing 8th in the league, their defense was behind Washington, Cincinnati, the Jets. So it'll be interesting from a perspective of how they actually give the cards and the ratings on the cards, because that's a real fine line. Do you overstate them because they made the Super Bowl, or do you give them ratings that are based on their performance? Mark, what are your thoughts on that?
I would think that the cards need to reflect the entire season, not just because these two made the Super Bowl. The other thing I think that the hype leading into the Super Bowl, in my view, has always overblown because it's generally based off of just the couple of games that have happened in the playoffs. And if you only look at that, the Eagles have been phenomenal in the playoffs. They beat up on the Giants, which I think most people thought the Giants would have put up a better game than they did. They didn't. And who knows with the 49er game with the injury to the quarterback so early on, what that could have been. But I think it seems to be a little bit skewed for them defensively because of that. That said, I don't know. I would think that most of these cards will look like a few spots with some big points, certainly for the all-pros, and then kind of level it out from there. Philadelphia's offensive line, I would think, will look very strong. That seems to be a very positive part of their team all season long. Defensively, I don't know. I would guess. I think Jeff, you're correct. My guess would be that these teams on offense will be in the probably 42, 43 range. Defensively, I don't know, 38 to 41, something like that. That would be my guess.
Now, of course, we've got those South, the AFC and NFC South, the 8 and 9 Bucks win the division, the 9 and 8 Jags who push the Chiefs. Now, what if we know the 8 and 9 Bucks, they're a wobbly team, inconsistent, one and done in the playoffs. But what if we were talking about the Bucks and the Chiefs right now, and what if Tom Brady walked off with another ring? You talked about, Ray, that boost. What would you do? How do you card them as they are now, and how might you card them if they had gone deeper into the postseason?
Yeah, I think that honestly, from the card making perspective, I think there was a sigh of relief when the Bucks didn't go very far in the playoffs, because historically cards have always been based on the regular season. The postseason, if the guy returns a kickoff for a touchdown or an interception for a touchdown, they'll put that on his card, but it usually doesn't impact his number rating. And so I do think that would have thrown a real wrench into things when you have, I mean, you're going to have that in baseball with the Phillies, making the World Series because they finished so low, but still made it as a wild card team. So that is going to be. I think that the Bucks will get whatever the numbers are that would be appropriate for an 8-7 or 8-9 team. So I don't see them. In fact, if you look at their offense, you can talk about Brady. The Bucks finished 25th in total offense in the league last year. They're not going to get a lot of points on offense. It's just not going to happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I would think the Bucks running back card would be pretty poor. They could not run the ball to save their life last year.
Right. Yeah, and as far as like when we talk about the offensive line and whatnot, I think they had one All-Pro. That was Lane Johnson. So he'll be a 5. And then it'll be interesting to see, who gets the 4s. Kansas City, Creed Humphrey, their center, was their only All-Pro offensive lineman. So as good as these offenses were, they didn't have a lot of All-Pros. And so it'll be interesting to see how they get to the number.
Ray, do they not just plug in the Statso into some basic formulas to kick out what the cards look like?
Okay, that's a great question, Mark. And when the most recent guy making the cards, what he would do is if a running back had an average of 4.6, it didn't matter which team he was on, they pretty much had the same card. But in the old days, it was different. In fact, if you ran a draft league, what you wanted to do was to get a guy that had a high average that was on a lousy team, because they would give him better numbers to accommodate the fact that they might be in the C index more often. That hasn't happened in recent years, and I'm not sure what's better or what's worse, but that may be a change that we see with the new card set coming out. Okay, Herson at the game company typically sets the point totals. He says, this is how much Kansas City should have on offense and defense. You decide which player should get what points. But he typically decides the big picture. This is, and I don't know where he is in that process, but obviously now that the season is over, he sits down and looks at that to determine what the overall team totals look like. And then whoever's doing the cards will actually look at each All-Pro, Pro Bowl player, etc., to try to create who's going to get the. And then the other thing that I think is critically important are the V ratings, the split between passing and rushing. And over the past few years, there have been fewer and fewer of those. Most people that get a 3 or a 4, they're just a straight through. And I liked it better when there were more differences between, a guy's ability against the run or his, etc. So we'll have to wait and see. The other thing that's interesting too, and you mentioned it in Jeff, and when you put the initial email out, was what about the receivers getting the A asterisk? Because that is a real interesting thing. It was probably about, I guess it was about 4 years ago that the game company changed the way that they give pass receiving grades. Rather than just seasonal totals, they looked at the average catches per game. And so if you only played 6 games, but you caught 30, there was a guy for the Bucks last year. Let me see if I got it. I wrote it down here somewhere. Yeah. There was a guy for the Bucks last year, Brown, a wide receiver. He had an A asterisk rating. He only caught 42 passes during the regular, but he only played in 7 games. Mm-hmm. So, he averaged 6 catches a game, and the cutoff for A asterisk receivers tends to be about 5 3/4 catches a game. So everybody that had 100 catches or more last year, I think, got an A asterisk rating. But there were a couple guys like Brown from the Colts or from the Ravens. He caught 91 passes. He only got an A. And yet Kelsey caught 92 passes for Kansas City and got an A asterisk because he only played in 16 games. He missed 1 game. So I think that as you look at the stats, you can use typically 2.5 catches per game on average gets you an A. 1 5/8 catches typically get you a B, and 5 3/4 catches a game will get you an A asterisk. And I think you can kind of expect that as you look at the current statistics and try to anticipate what that card set's going to look like. But there's always a couple surprises. You never know.
Exactly.
Ray, do you think what's your thought? Just the way the modern game is played, the receivers catch so many more passes, and they throw it half of a yard and it's a catch. Do you think that the way they look at it statistically should be adjusted at all? There's now an extra game for the regular season. What are your thoughts around just the style of play and how it relates to truly the A, Bs, and the Cs?
You want to know the truth? If you look at the APBA boards, an A receiver catches more passes that are thrown to him than a B receiver. There's more completion numbers. A B receiver is going to catch more passes than a C receiver on a percentage basis. So if the game company wanted to truly make an accurate representation of pass receiving grades, they should be based on the percentage of targets that somebody catches. But then they would throw out 50 years of, well, an A receiver is going to have to catch. No. If you had a guy that they only threw 32 passes to him and he caught 31 of them, there's no way in APBA you can recreate that. There's no way. He should probably get an A asterisk.
Right.
I mean, but he won't. That's just kind of the nature of how they do the cards. So my feeling is I don't have a problem with the way they do it, but I override it based on the quota system that I've used. And I've shared that with you before, Mark. You've seen that. But to my way of thinking, an A asterisk should always be better than an A, and an A should always be better than a B, etc.
Gentlemen,
here's the real genius now. He's just joined us from...
I'm sorry I'm late.
Mr. Wells.
But I knew Ray was going to be on, so I didn't want to listen to him talk about how to make cards.
Greg Wells, as Ray Dunlap, a former APBA Journal alum, right-hand man to the man, Howard Alskog, I would say. Is that fairly accurate?
Well, I don't know about right-hand man, but I certainly was good friends with Howard. He was a special guy.
We've already talked about the Eagles and Chiefs, and Mr. Wells, what is your take on how far into the 40s the Eagles and Chiefs are going to go, or do they skirt the 30s at all?
I think that's the question, right? The Eagles defense is very good. I will be upfront and candid with everybody that I hate the Eagles. And have always hated the Eagles. But you can't get around the fact that their defense is top notch. And, Hurts has got this bad shoulder, so can he throw would be the question, but you can't get around 14-1 when he played and 0-2 when he didn't, right? So, but Mahomes is crazy. Like Mahomes, you can't capture the magic of Mahomes really in an upper card or any kind of card. I mean, the guy is just sort of a genius. I don't know about the Chiefs defense, though. I think that the score will I think both teams will be in the 30. I would bet the over every time. But I think it'll be close. I think it'll be a field goal. I mean, I hope it's a good game. I think it'll be a field goal at best. All
right. And in terms of their point totals, how do you who outpoints whom on the offense or defense? Or do we have one of those cases where in APBA terms they are an even match? Almost?
Well, I think they'll be both B and B. I mean, that's pretty standard, right? For Super Bowl teams. I think that Hurts will probably be a 4 and Mahomes will be a 5. But I think the Eagles offensive line, and listen, I don't know everybody that plays for the Eagles offensive line, but I know that they have a really good offensive line. And that's what drives the offensive points, right? As you guys all know, you got to have that big line to get the big point total. I think they'll have that. I think the Eagles will be in like a 43, 44 kind of offense with Hurts being a 4 and the backup being a 2. So it hurts him when he's out. I think Mahomes is obviously going to be a 5. He's the AP MVP, so he'll be the AP first-team quarterback. So he's going to be a 5. Will they give 2 5s out this year? I can't remember. Jeff, do you remember if they gave 2 5s out last year, or Ray? Or
yeah, I mean, Rodgers was a 5, Mahomes was a 5, and Aaron Rodgers was a 5, and Brady was a 5. They gave 3 5 quarterbacks.
They gave 3 5s out. Yeah, that's what I thought that they gave. They don't always. That's unusual, right?
It is unusual, but they're going to give Hurts a 5.
You think so?
I think so.
I would believe that. I don't think they'll give. I don't think they'll give Brady a 5 or Rodgers.
Brady might get a 3.
I was going to say, does Brady go out as a 3? Wow.
They might give him a 3. Yeah, I can see that.
It's interesting because when you look at the All-Pros, Philadelphia had 6 All-Pros on defense. I mean, they can legitimately have 6 5s on their defense if they give All-Pros 5s. They may give a 5-4 split grid, but they got 6 All-Pros. Kansas City had no All-Pros on defense.
Right.
None.
So I didn't know. Have they announced the first team All-Pro?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. So you're ahead of me as always.
And Sauce.
Hey, can I just take one quick second to ask the question? I know Ray and I know Jeff, but I don't know the other gentleman on the call.
Mark DeGarabedian, sir, out in the West Coast.
Oh, yes, Mark. I've never seen Mark in person. We've exchanged a million emails. Mark,
nice to finally meet you.
Absolutely.
My apologies for not introducing everyone.
No, that's all right. It does say MD, but I thought he was from Maryland. That's what I was doing.
There you go. It's royal lineage. What now?
The last name would take up the entire screen, so the initials are better for me.
There you go.
So, Ray, do you think, Ray, you've done this for a million years, and you're better at the card thing than me. Does that? I would think they might give all 5s. If they do, that's going to make this Eagles defense. Even if everybody else is a 3, that could be If
the Eagles win the Super Bowl, I think there's a good chance that they could get all 6 of those guys could get 5s, all first team, all pros, so it'd be interesting to see. On the offensive side, as good as their offensive line is, Lane Johnson's the only all pro from the Eagles on the offensive line.
So he's a 5. They'll give a couple of 4s.
Yeah, they'll get some 4s on that line, but I think he may be the only 5 on the offensive line.
So if they give 6 5s, so that's 30. So you get 5 more guys, even if they're all 3s, that's still 45.
Right. Yeah. They're going to have a strong.
What was the 86 Bears? 85 Bears.
They were 48, I think, weren't they?
I think 48 is the number. So, and what day do you know? Do you even know what the 2000 Ravens were?
I can call it up. I'd have to call that up while we're.
I'm just curious whether they were. I think they were in that ballpark. I mean, look, with this, if that's the case, APBA aside, the Super Bowl aside, they're going to trounce. If you did an Eagles replay, you're going to get 15-1 or 14-2, right?
Mm-hmm.
They might even do all right in race. They'll probably only go out in the second round of race tournament.
And Mr. Wells, we were talking about the 8 and 9 Buccaneers, and what if we were talking about Tampa Bay facing Kansas City here, and they'd gone deeper into the postseason, and even Brady walks away with another ring. I mean, would that change in your mind the way the cards would have to be calculated for them slightly?
So the precedent for that, I think, Jeff, is the Giants team that went like 9-7, but knocked off the 15-1 Packers and then beat the Patriots, right? And I remember that being enormously controversial when that team was produced, because they didn't really adjust a lot of stuff. Eli's card was okay, but not great. But the argument you have to make is, if you want to take a 9-7 team that squeaked into the playoffs and then ran the table, you got to have hot dice, basically. I mean, that would be just sort of the logic of it. So I don't think that they would make significant. Look, if they had done that, Brady would have had to have a different kind of postseason, right? Brady was good for like 3 minutes a game, and the games were close. And if you're good in the last 3 minutes, and then you can win it, which he did, 3 or 4 times. So I don't think that they would adjust the cards. It's a great question, right? What happens when the big favorite gets knocked off? And that would have been. It's always a little interesting, because I think they probably make a few tweaks.
2000 Ravens, according to my, the Ravens are 40 on offense, 48 on defense, or a 46-50 split.
So they could get to 50. I remember that. They could sub in and get to 50.
And the 85.
One of the things that I didn't like about the last few sets, and I was pretty loud about it with my friend John, is I don't think he did enough splits. I don't think there was enough V-rating splits.
They are coming down. Right.
And I also don't think that they did enough multi-position players. Like, they never carded Gronkowski as an EB, but I know he's a tight end, but he split out all the time. And if you're splitting out, that's an EB, and that's a 3-wide formation. So I hope that whoever does this takes that into account.
And Greg, I'm going to add one other thing about the cards that I didn't like in the last few years. There's been more running quarterbacks, but because of the way the cards have been made, almost all the runs have been accounted for in scramble numbers. So you can't really run Josh Allen 4 or 5 times a game because he's going to get so many scrambles. He's going to end up with way more runs than he should have. And I always thought that there were too many of the quarterback runs that were accounted for in scramble numbers, too, especially for
I mean, look great. That Josh Allen card, obviously enormously controversial. The issue becomes too, and I know you know this because you're smarter than me, but if you put 5 run numbers on, now you're reducing the pass results to 31 chance. 36 is already pretty small. Yeah. Now you're going 31 or 30 if you get 6, and now you're never going to get the stat. You're never going to get the passing stats right.
No,
it's too small a sample.
It affects the passing stats. It affects the running numbers, and it limits the choice that you have as a coach to be able to choose to run the guy, because otherwise you're abusing it. You know.
That's right. And you know, first of all, they could get rid of the antiquated rule that says you can only run a quarterback once a half or once a game or whatever.
Well, even if you don't use that stupid rule,
well, if they say we're not going to do that, and if you want to run a quarterback, call a run and play for him, and he's got to pass off his passing column, sort of solves that problem, right? You know, I mean, the other thing is they put the K on the runner's card, which I pushed Fritz Light for pretty hard when the computer game came out. You could tell right away that the biggest problem was, and this was the way the game was designed. You know, you get a lot of 20-yard runs forward and 15-yard runs backwards, and it works out to the number, but it's stupid looking. And now with the K column solved for that, there's no reason why they couldn't put K's in the P column and have a touchdown, you know, in the K column for the passer.
Absolutely.
Then you get your yards per catch rate, because yards per catch are usually off.
Just going back really quickly, 2 things here. The 85 Bears were 49 on defense, but a 50-47 split. So another 50 there.
So the Bears were 50 on the pass
defense,
and the Ravens were 50 on the run. That's interesting, huh?
So it'd be a nice matchup there. Now, you know, speaking of, I'm glad you brought up the scramble, that whole sacks scramble number thing. You got Justin Fields this year, who I wonder if this is going to be another Bobby Douglas of 72, those dozen scramble numbers, because Fields had 1,143 yards rushing, 8 touchdowns, and the long is 67. But he also had 60.4% completion rate and 55 sacks. Now, there's some precedent like 2006 Vic or 90 Cunningham. Cunningham was close to 1,000 yards. Vic just over 1,000 rushing. Their completion rates, Cunningham 58.3% and 49 sacks. Vic 52.6% completion, 45 sacks. But given the fact that the scramble numbers are accounted for strictly as rushing attempts, and you already addressed the issue, the granularity, but is Justin Fields going to be the big controversy in quarterback cards this season?
There is no way they'll be able to recreate his passing statistics if they put all of his runs as scrambles, because he had a lot of planned runs, and his passing numbers will be absolutely tortured because of that. So that's one of my biggest pet peeves with the card set, is that they do that, and a guy like Fields is going to suffer as a consequence, and I don't think it's right.
You know, the other thing that people have said, and I don't know whether or not this is true, is that if you rush for a loss, which would be a sack in the NFL, they don't calculate the card assuming that there'll be runs for losses, and therefore they add this, so they're counting too many sacks. If you score it as a sack when they run for a loss,
not if you rush if you scramble for a loss, right?
Yeah, if I think about it, right, if you drop back 10 yards and then you start to run and you wind up losing 5 yards, right?
That's a sack. Yeah.
Or they calculate the card as if that's a rushing play for -5.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
It is a problem, and the other thing is, even if it's 0, that's a sack.
That's a sack.
So you end up with a ton of. I mean, it's a problem, and I don't know how you fix it.
I don't know how you fix it. That's exactly, and I think that's probably the issue.
Is it too much for the company to not simply? So in the modern era, you've got half a dozen quarterbacks that truly are runners, not just for scramble. Whether it's Allen, Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields. Why not just give these guys 2 cards? And when you call a run for the quarterback, you use the running card.
The problem, Mark, is that when you are trying to create the cards and you look at Justin Fields had 113 rushes or whatever it is, you have no idea how many of those were scrambles or how many of those were planned runs. You and I both know there was a good number of planned runs, but statistically, the league doesn't break that information out. So if you're sitting there looking at the stats at the end of the year, you either have to make a judgment call or you have to do what the game company does and just lump them all together.
Although I think Mercer needs to watch a lot of tape then. He just needs to sit down.
That's right. He's going to sit down. You know, I think the solution, Ray, if you think about it, is give a rating of some sort that says this quarterback will run the ball. You should run this quarterback X amount of times a game. And it would be, and then have scrambles still, right? So but it's less scrambles, and and those two numbers added together, whatever you think the scramble will be, plus whatever the R number is, you get the right amount of rushing attempts.
Right.
And the NFL Statistician's Guide is providing, and we should note that Mr. Dunlap served as official statistician of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from 1980 to 86 or 81 to 86.
Yeah.
So you know.
Wow, the early 80s. You're old.
Good thing I'm the only one that's old in this group.
That's right. It's replete with youngsters. This happens.
Fine old.
and the guide does kind of guide the statistician to say, look, if it's a design pass, if the quarterback looked downfield at an intended receiver, or it's a design run if the receivers were maybe blocking or not looking at, looking to catch a pass. So there's that. But right. There was that whole exchange. Aaron Rodgers, does he go? Does he make a 4? He probably makes a 4. Yeah,
I think he's a 4. Yeah,
yeah, he's a 4.
Yeah, I would think. Is there anybody that hasn't been a 4 before that'll get a 4 this year?
I don't know. It's a good. You're talking about just quarterbacks, or?
Well, I was, but if you have an offensive lineman that you're particularly keen on getting a 4 for the first time in his career, throw it out.
I think Joe Burrow might be a 5. I think he might get a 5.
You're tossing 5s around like they're going out of style.
Let me make the cards.
Do the 5s generally only go to the All-Pros, or will the 5 be awarded to a non-All-Pro?
No, they'll sometimes be awarded to a non-All-Pro if the team needs more points. But generally, it's All-Pros. It's All-Pros or Pro Bowl players. It used to be that when Fritz was doing the cards, and Greg will remember this, he used to use a lot of different sources. It wasn't just All-Pros. It was Pro Football Weekly's All-Pro team. It was, the AAP. He would use all these different accolades to try to create who the 5s and et cetera were. But again, if a team needs more points, then you're going to find some guys that are going to get maybe even the split grade. And I'm with Greg 100%. There need to be more split grades. The V ratings need to be more important than they have been.
That makes the game so much more fun when you've got
the two things, right? And the double multi-position, because when you're playing head-to-head, which is obviously what I prefer to play, if you get guys that can go from tight end to wide receiver, so you can go from pro set to a 3 wide, or vice versa. That's
without substituting.
Without substituting, you can audible into a change of formation and stick it to the guy playing defense, and that's the way this game was designed, right? And there was nothing more valuable. And right, you'll remember this from your league days. Those guys that could play strong safety and linebacker.
Oh,
right, because you could drop to a nickel.
Yep. So, absolutely.
Yeah, that's missing from today's game. So I think that's that would be big. Ray, I'm just talking about the quarterback 5, and you can check me on this but United's got a 5 in like 65, and then they didn't give a quarterback 5 out until 76. I think I'm right about that. And then they gave, or it might have been 70. Tarkenton might have got one in 75, and then they gave 2 in 76 to Stabler and Jones.
I remember Stabler and Jones. They had remarkable years, but
amazing years.
Yeah, and Greasy never got one.
Greasy never got one. I don't think they gave one. I'm sure I'm right that they didn't go. They went like 7, 8 years without giving a 5 out.
Okay,
and that would have been Seitz still.
Yeah,
so Seitz was probably comparing everybody to Unitas and go, well, he's not as good as Johnny Unitas.
Hell, Seitz was probably comparing everybody to Bobby Lane. Who knows?
Bobby Lane. So I just think it's interesting that this just evolved to now you can get quarter 3 with 5s, right? It's like getting 3 10s at shortstop, which we've seen in our lives.
Well, the three quarterbacks that made the All-Pro team were Mahomes, Hurts, and Burrow. Those were the three.
Right. You're not wrong. I actually don't think Hurts will get a 5 because he only played 13 games or something.
Yeah, I think he's going to get a 4.
I think he's going to get a 4.
Interesting. Speaking of,
it depends on whether, because also the other question is, will they need the points? Because that comes up, right? You want to make sure you get 44 probably.
Yeah.
So will they need the points?
You know, they might do with Hurts. Maybe they will give him a split as a 4 on the pass and a 5 as on a run, possibly.
That would, you know what, Mark? That's a great call. That would be interesting.
I don't
know if I've ever seen a V-rated quarterback.
I was going to say, yeah, but yeah.
Well, there's been some V-rated.
The modern era is so different than the way these guys play.
There were some in this year's card set. There were, in fact, I think, wasn't Mahomes a 5'4"? I think he was.
Ray, I played with 1974. That's I can tell you what's going on in that card set.
I've got the 2012 season, and Russell Wilson, I think it's a 3 pass and a 4 run in that season.
All right.
Let's see. Speaking of the making your points, and also we were talking about Ray was talking through the number of catches for the asterisk receivers, and is that Bills-Bengals game that was kind of nullified? Is that going to have any effect on carding this year, you think?
Well, they don't have the stats.
Both of those teams had 16 games only. The pass receiving ratings will be based on dividing the pass catches by the actual number of games they played, not the number that they were supposed to play. So yes, it will have an impact.
Hey, now that I know that there's an APBA All-Pro team based on Mr. Dunlap, I called it up, and I will call out that Chris Jones is on this team, so he will be a 5. I was surprised that he wasn't, because he had a huge year, so he'll be a 5.
Okay.
What about?
But you're right. The Eagles are loaded up on this thing.
What about Sauce Gardner as and here is Mr. Mahomes? Yes, the 5'4".
Look at that. Ray is so smart.
Well, that's because I'm playing with him tomorrow morning in my Super Bowl.
Oh, that's right. Mark, you've got your Tampa Bay Miami 81 Super Bowl coming up. And Ray,
no, it's midway through the second quarter right now, and Tampa Bay is cruising. I'm telling, this is where it's interesting. I'm going to grab Doug Williams' card.
You know, the statistician that created Doug Williams' card is
Mr.
Ray. He's probably writing the stats down wrong, getting him all kinds of good stats.
Doug Williams has been. We talked about hot dice earlier. Right. He has been on fire in this playoff run. Tampa Bay is just an average team. I think they were 9-7 that year. They're going to win unless a miracle happens. They're up 21-0 right now, midway through the second quarter, because Doug Williams cannot be stopped. Dice roll 31 is a 6. 51 is a 5. 25 is a 5. 44 is a 4. 33 is a 3. 55 is a 4. I haven't rolled any of the interception numbers. 32 is a 23. He'll complete 50% of his passes, but they're all for these massive chunks of yardage. He can't be stopped with a good roll.
That's an impressive card, man. I think they were like 9. I think you're right. I think they were nice. They did make the playoffs, I think.
They did. They went out, I think, in one game. But I'm telling you, and Doug Williams is only a 3. So they just finished beating the 49ers, where Joe Montana was, a 4. Joe Montana is nowhere near these numbers in his pass.
There we go. Let's complain about anyone Montana. Let's have it.
So 21-0 Bucks midway through the second quarter, Jeff.
And Ray, you're doing the 21 Super Bowl with KC and Green Bay.
Yeah. Yeah, the Rams got beat, the Bengals got beat. I'm down to Kansas City and the Packers.
I'm not surprised by that at all.
No. Yeah. Rodgers he's a 5. These two quarterbacks, this is going to be a fun game tomorrow morning.
100%.
What do you think happens?
One of the great teams.
I've got to ask this question. In terms of the points that, let's just take quarterback, for example. Doug Williams is a 3, but has these incredible numbers. Montana's a 4. There might be some others in that season, I can't remember, who are better in terms of points. But the passing columns, for the big play numbers, the good rolls, the 31, the 51, the 15s. Right. It is a little bit head scratching to me that like a Doug Williams, whether it's Doug Williams or anybody else, as a lower pointed quarterback has such better numbers than some of the higher pointed quarterbacks.
Again, when the cards were made back in the early 80s, the quarterbacks cards, the running backs cards, they were all made. So I don't know how many A receivers. If you're throwing to mostly B's and C's, you got to give the quarterback better numbers for him to get the completion percentage.
He's got 3 A's. Wilder's an A,
and
House is an A, and Giles is an
A. I guess Fritz just liked the Bucks. Who knows? You know.
Well, I mean, part of it is, you know, besides passing, there's the running piece, right? But what did the team do? The quarterback gets credit for sort of a one-loss record, I think. Ultimately, and this is harder in football, but ultimately, Sites in particular, so I'm sure whatever the rules are, Sites wanted to get the quote-unquote pennant race right. He wanted the teams that won to win, because he was afraid that, you know, if you bought the baseball game and the Detroit Tigers, you know, beat the Yankees, you'd think, well, this game's stupid, right? So he wanted, I think that's why, and I always thought that the fielding was the best thing about the APBA game, to my mind, is always this whole concept of team fielding, right? Because it helps with that, and B, there is team fielding, right? Like Strat and some of these other, they don't have team fielding, and I think that's a good one, and I think he just applied that to football. That's why we got the team ratings, right? He wanted to make sure that the good teams, even if they didn't have great individual statistics, would still win, and that's how he did it, right? So.
And that brings up,
I might be wrong.
An interesting.
I'm looking at 81 Tampa Bay now because I'm curious.
Yeah, right.
So their defensive backs coach was Wayne Fontes, future NFL head coach.
And their defensive backs, there are 15 points against the pass with the starting 4. They're pretty good. Their defense on the APBA game is 41, so their pass defense is good.
Oh, no, we're wrong about this is the 81. Oh, I'm looking at 80. Never mind.
Yeah, Doug Williams' numbers in 81 were not great. 50.5% completion.
Yeah. I mean, his completion percentage has been pretty spot on in the games I've used, but the numbers on some of these rolls, they're just gigantic.
Yeah.
Well, his yards per completion was 15. You would never get 15 yards per completion.
That's really high.
Yeah,
that's really high.
That must be why he has some.
And that's what this is where. So when we talked earlier about having the power column for touchdowns, right? He's going to get too many touchdowns because he's got a 4% touchdown, which is fine, but it's not exceptional. But because he's got this huge yards per attempt, no, yards per completion. I'm sorry, which is that's what's doing it.
That's right? What's doing it. Yeah.
Does he have a 2? What's he have an 11?
11's a 3, 66 is a 2.
So he's got a 2 and a 3.
Yeah.
Which back then everybody got 1s. I mean, you know.
Yeah, there was a lot of 1s back then. That's right. Yeah. Well, this is not the old game. I don't think you're using.
No, it's not. And this is a redone set because I thought redone set. Yeah. Okay. It's just interesting. It's like, you know, and it kind of skews how you might call a game because you're really more apt to throw more medium passes with these results, even the long pass. I mean, you generally stay away from a bit, not with this card.
Yeah, you sort of got to be careful with that, right? Because it is designed for the 60-40. So if you're not wrong, and listen, if we're playing head to head, I'm throwing medium with that card all the time.
Exactly.
But when it's something like this is where Greg Barrett, the great Ogard, and I have these philosophical conversations because he's so used to playing solitaire,
right?
That when I do things like we were playing a game and he kept going to 3 running backs. And so at one point I went, he was 3 running backs. I went pro set and double covered the receiver. He said, you can't double cover a receiver out of a goal line. I said, I didn't go goal line.
You didn't go goal line. Yeah.
You're playing head to head. You sort of have, solitaire, you sort of set that up. And I was like, and I think that's where you got to be in this, you got to make sure you're 60-40.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it drives Greg crazy that when I play solitaire, I call my plays and I don't have like a computer generated play call, but I'm the coach. You know how I know? The brochure said I was.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I just try to call it as realistically.
Listen, Mark, to me, that's what I said to Greg. I said, well, that's the fun of it for me. And I throw to see receivers. I mean, I do it, but it used to drive me crazy, right? That if I'm playing solitaire and I was using the finder, 3rd down and 8 in a big spot with 2 minutes to go in the 4th quarter, Tom Brady's not thrown to the fullback.
Right.
I hate the finder. You know that. We talked about that before. Yeah. I want to pick who I'm running, who I'm throwing to.
Yeah.
And
I like how you do your quota system.
You use the quota system, and you're very rigid, Ray, because you're an accountant at heart.
Look, hey,
I'm a marketing guy. I'm more of an artist.
The O-Guard is joining. Look at that.
We just talking about you.
His ears were burning.
And he's been summoned.
Hey, Greg.
He has been summoned.
I literally just referenced the great O-Guard, and there you are.
Oh my God!
How you guys doing, man?
Here you are. Let's for Mr. Barrett, let's run through a couple of questions quickly here. Obviously, I'll post this for tomorrow, so it'll be a pregame. How do you card the Chiefs and Eagles? How many points each? Offense, defense.
Well, I'm just going to be generic. I got to give them the Mats. I mean, they're the two best teams. I mean, maybe downgrade them a little on defense, but those offenses are killer to me. I don't know if you're going to 44 the high. I don't know what because these cards now, it seems like 44 is kind of like the cutoff.
Yeah.
They'd have to be 44. Say Kansas City 44, 42. I don't know in there. Philly, you could flip it. The thing that I'm interested in is how those QBs are going to be carded, because I haven't looked at their total percentages, but that Mahomes and Hurts, that's the thing that I'd be really curious about.
Someone suggested a 5 for Burrow.
How can you argue with that?
Well, how many quarterbacks are you going to give a 5 to? That's the argument that I would make. Yeah. Mahomes is going to get one because he's first team, so he's going to get the 5.
Yeah.
So would you give Hurts a 5?
Would I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would. I mean,
you and your friend Ray are giving out 5s like they're throwing nickels in a game here.
You're a 5, and you're a 5. It's like Oprah. What about
it's like Oprah?
Wait till I create my card from when I played in college. Wait till you see that.
Oh, you'll be a 6.
Oh, there you go.
You'll be an 8.
And then there were the 8 and 9 Bucks and the 9 and 8 Jags, and the idea that, the 8 and 9 Bucks, they are who we thought they were, I guess. Kind of wobbly and one and done in the postseason. But what if we were talking about Brady, Mahomes in the Super Bowl tomorrow, Mr. Barrett? How would that affect your idea of how you might?
No. Oh no. I'm a regular season guy, and he'd be rated for what they were in the regular season. Kind of similar. And these guys aren't as good as the Giants that beat the undefeated Patriots. They're not even that good. And that was a 9-7 team.
You and I went right to the same example, by the way.
Oh, great minds.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there you go. And then, Greg, Mr. Barrett, you're going to love this one. We were talking about, do we have we got that other Chicago mobile quarterback, Justin Fields, a la 72 Bobby Douglas, and then there's that whole Josh Allen thing. And we talked about the sacks, or the scramble numbers, and they're now strictly run gains or losses. But with 55 sacks to 1,143 yards rushing and a 60.4% completion rate, how many scramble numbers do you think Fields is going to need?
Well, it seems like their cutoff lately has been 6, but I think he would need more. You got to give him additional carries, manual carries. There's no other way. Just like, I'm doing 72 now. I got to give, I think it's 31's the number I got plugged into my locators for Bobby for scrambles to come up. You have to. You're not going to get it if you just go with dropbacks. If you go with dropbacks for the normal type quarterback, you're gonna attain your scrambles, and your sacks will be right in line, and your attempts, but not with a guy like Fields. That's a challenge.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the fact that in recent years, the way the cards have been made is that almost all the quarterbacks' runs have been accounted for in scramble numbers. Yes. And so if you do, because Justin Fields had 160 carries. They weren't all scrambles.
It's also how he's carded. You know, I want to see Fields carded as a dual purpose, kind of like a Tebow in 2011 type card, you know, the dual purpose. So you could run him inside and stay within the framework of the rules till the cows come home. You know, if you wanted to, you know, if you had to adhere to exactly how the rules are.
Yeah.
I mean, Greg, when you play, you're not worried. If you got a quarterback like Bobby Douglas, you're calling running plays for him. Is what you're saying, right?
Yeah. And you know me, I'm not even manually calling. I
know you got your gizmo.
But
one of the things that
runs, I got runs coded in for him as a running back. So
if they created the cards with the idea that rather than having this rule that says you can only run once each half or whatever the rule is, that if we gave the quarterback a run rating that just says you can run this guy 5 times a game, and then they adjust the scrambles for what, you know, if Fields ran, because Ray's right, if Fields ran 100 whatever times, let's just say he ran 160 times, so he ran 10 times a game.
160.
All right, so he's running, you know, he didn't play every game, but let's just say he ran 10 times a game, right? You say this guy should just run this guy 8 times, and then I'll factor the other 2 into scrambles. You're going to get a more realistic passing card. That's what's going to result, right? Would you agree with that, Greg?
Yeah.
But the problem is
your agreement.
See, what I do at the beginning of my tournament is I go through the numbers and I look at the card and I say, if I use this guy and he throws this many passes, as many passes as he threw in the regular season, he's going to scramble this many times. And with a guy like Justin Fields, it's going to work out that he's going to scramble 140 times, which means that you get 20 runs in an entire season that you can call for him. Yeah. That's where I have a problem.
No, you're spot on with this.
Yeah.
It must be right. We're agreeing with each other all the way on this. Hey, can I just point something out? And Jeff, I don't know where you're going to go to the defensive question with Greg, but we talked about this Eagles defense and, you know, the points. They're not going to get as many points as we said because they gave, you know, they were, the Eagles are, I mean, they're 8th in the league in points allowed. You know, that's not even the ballpark for the big number we were saying. They're going to be more like a 44 probably. And when I look at, when you said there were 6 of them, right? You were going first team, second team, third team, right? You were counting all 3 teams.
What's that?
When you were talking about the Eagles All-Pro players on defense.
Yeah,
you were seeing that as all 3 teams, right? Not just first team.
No, All-Pro, just first or second. I mean, Jason Hargrave, Hassan Reddick, T.J. Edwards, Darius Slay, James Bradbury, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
But only 2 of those guys, I think, but not first team all pros.
I think only 2 of them are.
2 of them are first team. They're the 5s.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's going to be. So they'll probably be a 44, 45 defense. I mean, the question is, did the Niners get like a 40, 45, or 46 team? The Niners defense was great this year.
Number one.
Absolutely. Yeah. By a lot.
And Buffalo was number 2.
Buffalo's number 2. They had a great defense too. Yeah. And I think they're going to have to give Buffalo a pretty strong defense because, you know, Buffalo's offense wasn't very good. I mean,
but they were number 4
about how great Josh Allen is. I mean,
they were 4th in the league in total offense. 4th. And second in defense. You know?
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Ray is right and I'm wrong.
I'm just looking at the numbers. That's all.
No, I know. When you say what were they in points scored though? Were they 4th in points scored? Or
I didn't check points scored. I just checked yards.
So they were second in the AFC to the Chiefs. You know, the Chiefs and the Eagles, you're talking about teams that scored a lot of points. They both scored. I mean, the Chiefs scored 496 points.
Yeah.
And the Eagles scored 477. They both led the league.
And Mahomes threw for 5,000 yards.
I know. It's ridiculous. You don't realize how great a year Mahomes had, I think, in some cases. Like, people were complaining about the fact that he was, like, such almost a unanimous MVP because Jalen Hurts should have got votes.
Oh, come on.
Jesus Christ. The guy, what do you want from the guy? Like they get rid of his best offensive weapon, and he still had a great year.
Oh, no kidding.
Hey, Greg, what would you card Hurts? Would you give him a 4-4, or would you give him a 4-5 card, Greg?
So that's a great question. We talked about that a little bit. I said he should be a 4, and somebody suggested maybe the 4-5. I could see the 4-5. I wouldn't. If you gave him a 4.5, I wouldn't argue with you on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think he's a straight up 5. I kind of do think
I
Burrow
would
is a straight
agree
up
with
5.
that. Going just off the basis of what a 5 is, and a 5's an all-pro.
Yeah. Right. I mean, one of the things with Burrow is, the Bengals offensive line is putrid, right? So they're not going to, they might have a 4, but they're going to be mostly 3s. So you almost have to give Burrow a 5 because they're going to get their offense up.
Right.
I think he will get a 5 because of that.
Yeah.
Because I'll bet you they might even have a 2.
They might have a 2. I think
really
that's right.
might.
They could. Absolutely.
Burrow threw for almost 4,500 yards. He's going to be a 5. He should be a 5. He had an amazing year.
And
what
Nixon's
do you guys think
good.
Brock Purdy will be carded at?
Honestly, I think he's a 3.
He's going to be a 3.
I love the guy, but I think he's a 3.
Yeah, it's weird. It's unusual for a rookie to get a better rating than that. I mean, Marino was. I don't even think Marino was. I think Marino was a 4 as rookie.
He was a 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could go to the Ogard website and check that out because I did an article about Marino's rookie year.
It's a great article.
Speaking of the B ratings, and we know that they've kind of diminished lately, but are there any obvious split folks to you? I mean, we're talking about, maybe Mahomes or whatever, but any other folks who are like a real, I mean, we used to see like 5-2, or I think I've even seen a 5-1 on occasion here or there. I mean,
what was one of Dion's old cards, Jeff? Didn't he have like a 2 as his tackle rating? 5-2?
I think he was. I think that's right, Greg. I think he was a 5-2 once. There used to be a lot of the defensive ends would be 5-3s or right, or 4-2s. That was pretty solid, especially the guys that only rush
packages.
Right. I bet Gastineau was a 5-3 one year or 4-2. Gastineau was.
He could have been. I'm curious what his 84 card was. He had straight 5s there, but.
I assume you were happy with the Hall of Fame class, by the way. I know I was.
Yes.
Well deserved.
Yeah. I love Pleco, and of course, Revis is Revis, but I really love Joe Pleco.
I know Brian, my son Brian is a big Bucks fan. He was all happy with Rondé. He was happy. Rondé deserves it, though, boy.
Yeah.
When you saw they sent Joe Namath to knock on Pleco's door, it was pretty
awesome.
Yeah, that was cool.
What about, so let's see, and Rookie of the Year, Sauce Gardner, does he 4 or 5?
Hey, he's gonna be something special if he continues on his trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, he'll be a 4, but he's a good ball player. I think McCaffrey's going to be a 5 for the 49ers. I do. I think he had an amazing year. So
yeah, he did. Straight up 5, Ray, or split?
I think he'll be a straight up 5. He's as good as a runner as he is a receiver. So I can't see them giving him a split on that.
Was he APL Pro?
Yes. Yeah, all first team.
All right. Yeah, he's a 5. I agree with you, actually. I would have been surprised if he wasn't an APL Pro.
Speaking of Christian McCaffrey, I was looking at Austin Eckler. He had 107 catches as a running back for 722 yards and 7 touchdowns. One of only 6 running back performances that I saw, I think, on StatMuse. Would he get the asterisk out of the 6 running back performances of 100 plus catches?
Every receiver in the set last year that caught at least 100 passes got the asterisk. There were a bunch of guys that had 90 that didn't. But everybody that had 100 got an asterisk. Yeah. So I have to believe that he'll get one.
I think they invented the asterisk because the first guy that got 100 was an AFL guy.
Was one of the 2 receivers for the Dolphins.
No, I thought it was the guy that Bills got 100.
Well, Don Hudson, the 41 Packer G-top they always, that was one of the. But that's,
But I do think that everybody that gets 100 gets an asterisk. Right.
They do.
And then and that by that token, so if you're looking at the receiving from last year, we got about 10 receivers in that category, and then a couple guys on the cusp, like 90 something. Jefferson, Hill, Kelsey, Diggs, Eckler, Lamb, St. Brown, Godwin, Devontae Adams, and then you got Michael Pittman Jr. at 99, Devonta Smith 95. So those cusp guys, I mean, does that and Pittman was started and played 16 games and 99 catches. Devonta Smith 17.
So again, the formula is 5 3/4 catches per game.
Right.
If the guy caught 100, he almost always gets an asterisk. But when the guy has less than 100 catches, they take the number of catches divided by the games played. So like a guy like Moore for the Carolina Panthers last year caught 93 passes. That's only 5.47 a game. He got an A with 93 catches. Kelsey caught 92 passes, one less, but he played one less game, and he got an A asterisk. So I don't know if they'll stick to that, but that's historically what they've done.
I might give Kelsey an A asterisk if he only catches 10 passes.
Yeah. That's the
well, they caught 110.
One of the things, I think one of the things that came out of the football dinner that we have was that fact that it became catches per game, because it used to just be you had to get 40 catches.
Right. And we talked about Tampa Bay had receiver Brown last year. He caught 42 passes. He got an A asterisk because he only played in 7 games.
Right. Then he took his shirt off and threw it in the stands.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
but you would have never seen a guy catching 42 passes that would have gotten an A asterisk.
Right. That's exactly
right. To your point, 40 passes was an A. Didn't matter how many games they played. So,
Greg, you're doing the 72 season with the latest set now.
Yeah, I've never done it before. 72. It's the absolute joy.
And this is the
for all of us
second reprint. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yes, it's the latest revision. Yeah.
So how are you finding the set? Your Dolphins are undefeated through 6 weeks so far. The Dolphins,
and dominantly so. Jeff, I'm just having a lot of fun with this set. For me, a lot of it has to do about the year you're doing and where you were in your life at that point in time. And I was, 10-year-old kid, at the pinnacle of, loving football as a boy, and so as I play these games, as I do the research, through YouTube games, I always watch the game before I play it, read what I can on it. It takes me back to loved ones that, hell, all my family's dead, so it takes me back to remembering them.
And you got some brothers that are still alive, my friend.
A wonderful thing.
You got some brothers that are still alive.
Oh yeah, I do. And I'm looking at them, really enjoying the set, Jeff. I am. It's like anything else, it's still early, and I think I'm only in like game 78, it takes time for things to normalize, as you were, thing. And to be honest with you, these 14 game seasons, it might take you all the way up to the last week for it to come in line. But I noticed that my running back averages have now gotten perfectly in line to where they were a little elevated, and so it's just time.
Awesome.
The one thing that we can all agree on, I think, is, and Greg has proved this out time and again, these questions are accurate, right?
Yeah.
There's accuracy.
Oh, yeah.
Every player's not coming out right. That's not the way it works. But the league, it comes out right, and that is the way it works. And so therefore it's accurate.
Yeah, and that's all I pay attention to is that NFL cumulative file. Are the league averages, right? Because you're going to have players, right, that are higher, players are lower.
It's 36 dice rolls on the card. You might roll more 66s for one guy.
And I'll tell you.
Mark talked about Williams being hot.
I'll tell you one other thing that everybody here, I'm sure, would agree with. The 3 hours it takes me, it's 3 hours of pure enjoyment for me. I don't look at that as being a bad thing at all. I love the fact that I'm calling every play. I'm keeping track of every, yard. That 3 hours is nothing. It's so much fun. And I don't understand why people say, oh, football takes too long.
And, the thing I always say, Ray, is if you played a baseball game, it's like playing 4 baseball games. Do you ever play 4 baseball games in a day?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Right? It's the same. It's basically the same thing. It's just, So I agree with that completely. And I think you guys would agree with this, it's much more, you're much more in your head playing the football game than any of the other games.
No question.
No, you think
you have to be involved.
Strategy, you got to know what's going on.
Every step.
That's why it's the best face-to-face game. I love playing face-to-face because now you're in your head and their head.
So
you live there in your opponent's head there, Mr. Wells.
So anyway, Greg Barrett and I have a game to play. We talked about it for years, and hopefully we'll do it this year at the convention. But the 68 Cowboys against the 68 Jets.
Ooh, yeah.
I
that'll
swear
be a
the
good
68 Cowboys was one of their best teams that didn't make the Super Bowl. So I think that'll be a hell of a game if we can do
I
that.
agree.
So.
Hey, well, Ray, when I replayed that 68 season, the last revision of it, that was the Super Bowl, Jets and the Cowboys.
Yep.
It just happened to break right for the guys in green that day.
I should have flown out to Seattle to play that game against you.
Yeah.
That will be a great game, by the way. Absolutely.
So,
gentlemen, we're going to wrap up here. I think. Thank you all so much for your time. If I just go around the horn really quickly, if we got we're at the 2-minute warning here. Mr. Wells, the first game you want to play out of the 2022 season set?
Oh, I'll play this game. I'll play the Eagles and the Chiefs, Jeff. And thanks for pulling this together. This was great fun.
Sure. Thank you. Mark, what's your first game out of the set?
Oh, I'm going to play the first game of the season. Russell Wilson's coming back to Seattle with the Broncos against the Seahawks, and we'll see what happens.
Ray?
Well, because I do a tournament that pits the best against the worst, it's probably going to be Philadelphia and Chicago. That probably won't be much of a game, but I got to play it. So
you never know. Justin Fields. Greg?
Well, it'd have to be the Jets trip to Gillette Stadium there when it was 3-3 with 10 seconds left. I'd have to replay that game.
Awesome.
Yeah. Now that he says that, Jeff, I'll just say that usually when I get a card set, the first game I play is the Jets and the Patriots, because that's the first game I ever played with an APBA football game was the Jets and the Patriots. So I always try.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And
what about you, Jeff? What game will you play?
Gosh, that's a good question. Probably the Super Bowl would be the easiest one. Maybe the Buccaneer, or maybe the Jaguars Chiefs. Actually, could be.
That's a good one. Well, that was a great playoff game.
So it was. Greg Barrett, tomorrow I play my Super Bowl.
I know you do.
I'm going to post on your site at the end of each quarter just to update.
Perfect.
So
perfect. Awesome. I follow it religiously.
Okay.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it, Ray. I think it's going to be a great game for you to roll.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
It'll
be fun. It off, Ray.
And I'm going to kick off at noon Eastern time.
Okay.
So be done by 3 and plenty of time for the regular Super Bowl. And Mark, your game is going to be done. You're the middle of the second quarter right now, right?
I am. It'll be done by kickoff tomorrow.
What's up with them Buccaneers, Mark?
Greg, we were talking about it earlier before you were on. This Doug Williams card is unstoppable.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Jeff, thank you so much for putting this together. I had a blast. This was great.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Thank you all.
Great to see all you guys. Take care.